Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are going to tackle something that, let's be honest, most of us absolutely dread, the annual performance review. But what if it didn't have to be a chore? What if it could actually be a tool for growth? That's what we're digging into. How performance management is evolving from just a box-ticking exercise into something way more powerful. So let's get right into it.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Is your company's annual performance review broken? Seriously, think back to the last one you went through. Did you walk out of that meeting feeling fired up and inspired? Did it actually help you? If you're like most people, the answer is probably a big fat no.
And you know what? That's not just a hunch. The data backs it up completely. A survey of HR leaders found that a staggering 82% think traditional reviews are just not effective. I mean, think about that. They don't motivate people, they don't really develop talent, and they definitely don't improve performance. For a process that eats up so much time and energy, that is a massive failure. So what is going on here?
To really understand the solution, we've got to dissect the problem first. So in this first part, let's break down exactly why the old school, outdated model of the annual review is so out of place in the world we work in today.
I'm guessing this looks pretty familiar, right? The old way is usually based on a forced bell curve, where managers have to slot a certain number of people into the top and bottom buckets. Talk about creating unhealthy competition. The whole thing is just a look back at an entire year, all boiled down to one simple rating. And the worst part? It gets filed away in some digital folder, never to be seen again. This isn't a system for growth, it's a system for record keeping.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The traditional process is absolutely obsessed with grading what's already happened. But the real value, the real goal, should be about building the future. And to do that, it's not enough to just get a new process. We need a totally new way of thinking.
Which brings us to probably the single most important part of this whole conversation, a fundamental shift in our mindset. This isn't about putting a Band-Aid on the old system. Nope, it's about ripping out its foundation and building something new. We have to move from a culture of just evaluating people to a culture of actually developing them.
So what does that shift really look like in practice? Well, first off, we ditch the whole annual report card on past performance. Instead, the focus completely shifts to the continuous development of an employee's future potential. It stops being about, so how did you do last year? And it starts being about, where can you go next and how can we help you get there? And next up, the entire power dynamic changes. We move away from that top-down, manager-driven assessment where you're just sitting there, passively getting a grade. The new model is all about employee-owned growth planning. It puts you in the driver's seat of your own career. Your manager's role changes too. They become more of a coach and a resource, not just a judge. And finally, we have to get rid of this obsession with ranking and rating people. Those labels, they're limiting, and honestly, they're often super demotivating. The goal shifts to coaching and building real, tangible skills. The conversation becomes about how we can help you develop, how we can overcome challenges together, all through supportive, ongoing dialogue.
Okay, so we've nailed down the why and the new mindset we need. But what does this actually look like day to day? In this section, let's get into the mechanics of the new model, the continuous growth framework.
At its core, continuous performance management is a dynamic system. You should think of it less like a one-time exam and more like an ongoing conversation. You've got real-time feedback happening all the time, agile goals that can actually change when priorities change, and frequent informal chats about development. These are the things that replace that single high-stress annual review.
Now, research points to this really powerful framework for making this work. It's called the 3 performance cues. First, you have path cues, which is all about giving people the context they need to make smart decisions. Second, pace cues, which means focusing on wellness to stop people from burning out. And third, progress cues, recognizing achievements as they happen, not 6 months later. And the research is so clear on this. If you get these 3 cues right, you can potentially double optimal performance. That's huge.
Now, this new framework often uses agile goal-setting systems, like OKRs. That stands for Objectives and Key Results. It's basically a way to connect the company's big-picture goals directly to what you're working on every day. The goals cascade down so everyone's aligned. They're set in short cycles so you can adjust quickly. And progress is tracked openly, so everyone can see how their piece of the puzzle fits into the whole.
And really, this is the most important rule for setting goals in today's world. They have to be dynamic, not static. The idea of setting a goal in January and then just rigidly sticking to it until December, that's a recipe for becoming irrelevant. The world just moves way too fast for that. Our goals and our systems have to be able to move with it. And by tracking progress with real data, the conversations totally change. They move away from just gut feelings or that recency bias, where a manager only remembers what you did in the last couple of weeks. Instead, decisions become evidence-based. That makes them way more fair, way more targeted, and just way more effective.
All right, this all sounds really good in theory, but let's get real. Does it actually work? In our final section, we're going to look at the hard data that proves the impact of this new approach, and then we'll lay out a clear path for actually putting it into practice.
So what's the payoff? Well, first up, teamwork. When feedback is happening all the time and goals are transparent, those departmental silos start to crumble. And the result? Studies show a massive 44% boost in collaboration. People actually start working together more effectively.
And it has a direct impact on the bottom line. We see a 24% increase in both performance and morale. And that is so important. It proves you don't have to choose between having a happy team and having a high-performing team. When people feel supported and they're clear on their goals, you get both.
But this might be the most powerful stat of all, especially right now, the impact on well-being. By giving people clarity, recognizing their progress, and managing their pace, this model leads to a 41% reduction in employee fatigue. This isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter, and in a much more sustainable way.
So how do you actually get there? Here's a simple 5-step roadmap. First, you've got to build a culture where giving and getting feedback all the time is normal and welcome. Second, create development plans that are directly tied to real business goals. Third, bring in simple tools that make giving that real-time feedback easy. Fourth, and this one is absolutely critical, train your managers to be coaches, not just bosses. And finally, measure the impact of all this on performance, on engagement, not just whether or not people completed the forms.
We'll end with this powerful thought. The old systems of performance management, well, they got us to where we are now. But to build the kind of high-performing, agile, and resilient organizations we need for the future, we have to find a new approach. What brought you here will not take you there. The only question left is, are you ready?